Hey guys, today we're going to be reading chapter 13 of Matilda, titled The Weekly Test. And today we get to find out what happened with the newt that Lavender put in the water jug. What do you think? Let's find out. At 2 o'clock sharp, the class assembled, including Miss Honey, who noted that the jug of water and the glass were in the proper place. Then she took up a position standing right in the back. Everyone waited. Suddenly, in marched the gigantic figure of the headmistress in her belted smock and green breeches. "Good afternoon, children," she barked. "Good afternoon, Miss Trenchbull," they chirped. The headmistress stood before the class, legs apart, hands on hips, glaring at the small boys and girls who sat nervously at their desks in front of her. "Not a very pretty sight," she said. Her expression was one of utter distaste, as though she were looking at something a dog had done in the middle of the floor. "What a bunch of nauseating little warts you are." Everyone had the sense to stay silent. "It makes me vomit," she went on, "to think that I am going to have to put up with a load of garbage like you in my school for the next 6 years. I can see that I'm going to have to expel as many of you as possible, as soon as possible, to save myself from going round the bend." She paused and snorted several times. It was a curious noise. You can hear the same sort of thing if you walk through a riding stable when horses are being fed. "I suppose," she went on, "your mothers and fathers tell you that you're wonderful. Well, I'm here to tell you the opposite, and you'd better believe me. Stand up, everybody." They all got up quickly to their feet. "Now put your hands out in front of you, and as I walk past, I want you to turn them over so I can see if they are clean on both sides." The Trenchbull began a slow march along the rows of desks, inspecting the hands, and all went well until she came to a small boy in the second row. "What's your name?" she barked. "Nigel," the boy said. "Nigel what?" "Nigel Hicks," the boy said. "Nigel Hicks what?" the Trenchbull bellowed. She bellowed so loud she nearly blew the little chap out the window. "That's it," Nigel said, "unless you want my middle name as well." He was a brave little fellow, and one could see that he was trying not to be scared by Gorgon, who towered over him. "I do not want middle names, you blister," the Gorgon bellowed. "What is my name?" "Miss Trenchbull," Nigel said. "Then use it when you address me. Now then, let's try again. What is your name?" "Nigel Hicks, Miss Trenchbull," Nigel said. "That's better," the Trenchbull said. "Your hands are filthy, Nigel. When did you last wash them?" "Well, let me think," Nigel said. "That's rather difficult to remember exactly. It could have been yesterday, or it could have been the day before." The Trenchbull's whole body and face seemed to swell up as though she were being inflated by a bicycle pump. "I knew it," she bellowed. "I knew as soon as I saw you that you were nothing but a piece of filth. What's your father's job? A sewage worker?" "He's a doctor," Nigel said, "and a jolly good one. He says we're all so covered with bugs anyway that a bit of extra dirt never hurts anyone." "I'm glad he's not my doctor," the Trenchbull said. "And why, might I ask, is there a baked bean on the front of your shirt?" "We have them for lunch, Miss Trenchbull." "And do you usually put your lunch on the front of your shirt, Nigel?" Is that what this famous doctor father of yours has taught you to do? Baked beans are hard to eat, Miss Trenchbull. They kept falling off my fork. You are disgusting, the Trenchbull bellowed. You are a walking germ factory. I don't wish to see any more of you today. Go and stand in the corner with on one leg with your face on the wall. But Miss Trenchbull, don't argue with me, boy, or I'll make you stand on your head. Now do as you're told. Nigel went. Now stay where you are, boy, while I test you on your spelling to see if you've learned anything at all this past week. And don't turn round when you talk to me. Keep your nasty little face to the wall. Now then, spell right. Which one? Nigel asked. The thing you do with a pen or the one that means the opposite of wrong? He happened to be an unusually bright child, and his mother had worked hard with him at home on spelling and reading. The one with the pen, you little fool. Nigel spelt it correctly, which surprised the Trenchbull. She thought that she had given him a very tricky word, one that he wouldn't yet have learned, and she was peeved that he had succeeded. Then Nigel said, still balancing on one leg and facing the wall, Miss Honey taught us how to spell a new very long word yesterday. And what word was that? The Trenchbull asked softly. The softer her voice became, the greater the danger. But Nigel wasn't to know this. Difficulty, Nigel said. Everyone in the class can spell difficulty now. What nonsense, the Trenchbull said. You are not supposed to learn long words like that until you are at least 8 or 9. And don't try to tell me everybody in the class can spell that word. You are lying to me, Nigel. Test someone, Nigel said, taking an awful chance. Test anyone you like. The Trenchbull's dangerous, glittering eyes roved around the classroom. You, she said, pointing at a tiny, rather daft little girl called Prudence. Spell difficulty. Amazingly, Prudence spelled it correctly, and without a moment's hesitation. The Trenchbull was properly taken aback. She snorted. And I suppose Miss Honey wasted the whole one lesson teaching you to spell that one single word. Oh, no, she didn't, piped Nigel. Miss Honey taught us to taught it to us in 3 minutes, so we'll never forget it. She teaches us a lot of words in 3 minutes. What exactly is this magical method, Miss Honey? Asked the headmistress. I'll show you, piped up the brave Nigel again, coming to Miss Honey's rescue. Can I put my other foot down and turn around, please, while I show you? You may do neither, snapped the Trenchbull. Stay as you are and show me just the same. All right, Nigel said, wobbling crazy on his one leg. Miss Honey gives us a little song about each word, and we sing it together, and we learn to spell it in no time. Would you like to hear the song about difficulty? I should be fascinated, the Trenchbull said in a voice dripping with sarcasm. Here it is, Nigel said. Miss D, Miss I, Miss F, F, I, Miss C, Miss U, Miss L, T, Y. That spells difficulty. How perfectly ridiculous, snorted the Trenchbull. Why are all these women married? And anyway, you're not meant to teach poetry when you're teaching spelling. Cut it out in the future, Miss Honey. But it does teach them some of the harder words wonderfully well, Miss Honey murmured. Don't argue with me, Miss Honey, the headmistress thundered. Do as you're told. I shall now test the class on multiplication tables to see if Miss Honey has taught you anything at all in that direction. The Trenchbull had returned to her place in the front of the classroom, and her diabolical gaze was moving slowly along the row of tiny pupils. "You," she barked, pointing at a small boy called Rupert in the front row. "What is 2 times 7? What is 2 sevens? 16? Rupert answered with a foolish abandon. The Trenchbull started advancing slow and soft-footed upon Rupert in the manner of a tigress stalking a small deer. Rupert suddenly became aware of the danger signals and quickly tried again. "It's 18, he cried. 2 sevens are 18, not 16. "You ignorant little slug," the Trenchbull bellowed. "You wistless weed. You empty-headed hamster. You stupid glop of glue." She now stationed herself directly behind Rupert, and suddenly she extended her hand the size of a tennis racket and grabbed all the hair on Rupert's head in her fist. Rupert had a lot of golden-colored hair. His mother thought it was beautiful to behold and took a delight in allowing it to grow extra long. The Trenchbull had a great dislike for long hair on boys, and she had for plaits and pigtails on girls, and she was about to show it. She took a firm grip on Rupert's long golden tresses with her giant hand, and then, by raising her muscular right arm, she lifted the helpless boy clean out of his chair and held him aloft. Rupert yelled. He twisted and squirmed and kicked in the air and went on yelling like a stuck pig. And Miss Trenchbull bellowed, 2 sevens are 14. 2 sevens are 14. I'm not letting you go till you say it. From the back of the class, Miss Honey cried out, "Miss Trenchbull, please let him down. You're hurting him. All his hair might come out." "And well, it might, if he doesn't stop wriggling," snorted the Trenchbull. "Keep still, you squirming worm." It really was a quite extraordinary sight to see this giant headmistress dangling the small boy high in the air, and the boy spinning and twisting like something on the end of a string and shrieking his head off. "Say it," bellowed the Trenchbull. "Say 2 sevens are 14. Hurry up, or I'll start jerking you up and down, and then your hair really will come out. And we'll have enough of it to stuff a sofa. Get on with it, boy. Say 2 sevens are 14 or I'll let you go." 2 sevens are 14, he gasped. Rupert, whereupon the Trenchbull, true to her word, opened her hand and quite literally let him go. He was a long way off the ground when she released him, and he plummeted to the earth and hit the floor and bounced like a football. "Get up and stop whimpering," the Trenchbull barked. Rupert got up and went back to his desk, massaging his scalp with both hands. The Trenchbull returned to the front of the class. The children sat there hypnotized. None of them had seen anything quite like this before. It was splendid entertainment. It was better than a pantomime, but with one big difference. In this room, there was an enormous human bomb in front of them, which was liable to explode and blow someone to bits at any moment. The children's eyes were riveted on the headmistress. "I don't like small people," she was saying. "Small people should never be seen by anybody. They should be kept out of sight in boxes like hairpins and buttons. I cannot for the life of me see why children have to take so long to grow up. I think they do it on purpose." Another extremely brave little boy in the front row spoke up and said, "But surely You were a small person once, Miss Trenchbull, weren't you? I was never a small person, she snapped. I have been large all my life, and I don't see why others can't be the same. But you must have started out as a baby, the boy said. Me? A baby, shouted the Trenchbull. How dare you suggest such a thing? What cheek! What infernal insolence! What's your name, boy? And stand up when you speak to me. The boy stood up. My name is Eric Ink, Miss Trenchbull, he said. Eric what? The Trenchbull shouted. Ink, the boy said. Don't be a jerk, boy. There's no such name. Look in the phone book, Eric said. You'll see my father there under Ink. Very well then, the Trenchbull said. You may be Ink, young man, but let me tell you something. You're not indelible. I'll very soon rub you out if you try getting clever with me. Spell what? I don't understand, Eric said. What do you want me to spell? Spell what, you idiot? Spell the word what? W-O-T, Eric said, answering too quickly. There was a nasty silence. I'll give you one more chance, the Trenchbull said, not moving. Ah, yes, I know, Eric said. It's got an H in it. W-H-O-T. It's easy. In two large strides, the Trenchbull was behind Eric's desk, and there she stood, a pillar of doom, towering over the helpless boy. Eric glanced fearfully back over his shoulder at the monster. I was right, wasn't I? He murmured nervously. You were wrong, the Trenchbull barked. In fact, you strike me as the sort of poisonous little pockmark that will always be wrong. You are wrong. You are wrong. You speak wrong. You look wrong. You are wrong all around. I will give you one more chance to spell what? Eric hesitated. Then he said very slowly, it's not W-O-T, and it's not W-H-O-T. Ah, I know. It must be W-H-O-T-T. Standing behind Eric, the Trenchbull reached out and took hold of the boy's two ears, one with each hand, pinching them between her forefinger and her thumb. Ow! Eric cried. You're hurting me. I haven't even started yet, the Trenchbull said briskly. And now, taking a firm grip on his two ears, she lifted him bodily out of his seat and held him aloft. Like Rupert before him, Eric squealed the house down. From the back of the classroom, Miss Honey cried out, Miss Trenchbull, don't. Please let him go. His ears might come off. They'll never come off, the Trenchbull shouted. I've discovered through long experience, Miss Honey, that ears of small boys are stuck very firmly to their heads. Let him go, Miss Trenchbull, please, begged Miss Honey. You could damage him. You really could. You could wrench them right off. Ears never come off, the Trenchbull shouted. They stretch most marvelously, like these are doing now. But I can assure you they never come off. Eric was squealing louder than ever and pedaling the air with his legs. Matilda had never before seen a boy, or anyone else for that matter, held aloft by his ears alone. Like Miss Honey, she felt very sure both ears were going to come off at any moment with all the weight that was on them. The Trenchbull was shouting, the word what is spelled W-H-A-T. Now spell it, you little wart. Eric didn't hesitate. He had learned from watching Rupert a few minutes before that the quicker you answered, the quicker you were released. W-H-A-T, he squealed, spells what? Still holding him by the ears, the Trenchbull lowered him back into his chair behind his desk. Then she marched back to the front of the class, dusting off her hands in one against the other, like someone who had been handling something rather grimy. That's the way you make them learn, Miss Honey, she said. You take it from me. It's no good just telling them. You've got to hammer it into them. There's nothing like a little twisting and twiddling to encourage them to remember things. It concentrates their minds wonderfully. You could do them permanent damage, Miss Trenchbull, Miss Honey cried. Oh, I have. I'm quite sure I have, the Trenchbull answered, grinning. Eric's ears will have stretched quite considerably in the last couple of minutes. They'll be much longer now than they were before. There's nothing wrong with that, Miss Honey. I'll give him an interesting pixie look for the rest of his life. But Miss Trenchbull, oh, do shut up, Miss Honey. You're as wet as any of them. If you can't cope in here, then you can find a job in some cotton wool private school for rich brats. When you have been teaching for as long as I have, you'll realize that it's no good at all being kind to children. Read Nicholas Nickleby, Miss Honey, by Mr. Dickens. Read about Mr. Wackford Squeers, the admirable headmaster of Dothboys Hall. He knew how to handle the little brutes, didn't he? He knew how to use the birch, didn't he? He kept their backsides so warm you could have fried eggs and bacon off of them. A fine book, that. But I don't suppose this bunch of morons we've got here will ever read it, because the look of them, they are never going to read anything. I've read it, Matilda said quietly. The Trenchbull flicked her head round and looked carefully at the small girl with dark hair and deep brown eyes sitting in the second row. What did you say? She asked sharply. I said I've read it, Miss Trenchbull. Read what? Nicholas Nickleby, Miss Trenchbull. You are lying to me, madam, the Trenchbull shouted, glaring at Matilda. I doubt there's a single child in this entire school who has read that book. And here you are, an unhatched shrimp, sitting in the lowest form there is, trying to tell me a whopping great lie like that. Why do you do it? You must take me for a fool. Do you take me for a fool, child? Well, Matilda said, then she hesitated. She would like to have said, yes, I jolly well do. But that would have been suicide. Well, she said, again, hesitating, still refusing to say no. The Trenchbull sensed that the child was thinking, and she didn't like it. Stand up when you speak to me, she snapped. What is your name? Matilda stood up and said, my name is Matilda Wormwood, Miss Trenchbull. Wormwood, is it? The Trenchbull said. In that case, you must be the daughter of that man who owns Wormwood Motors. Yes, Miss Trenchbull. He's a crook, the Trenchbull shouted. A week ago, he sold me a second-hand car that he said was almost new. I thought he was a splendid fellow then. But this morning, while I was driving that car through the village, the entire engine fell out on the road. The whole thing was filled with sawdust. The man's a thief and a robber. I'll have his skin for sausages, you see if I don't. He's clever at his business, Matilda said. Clever my foot, the Trenchbull shouted. Miss Honey tells me that you are meant to be clever too. Well, madam, I don't like clever people. They are all crooked. You are most certainly crooked. Before I fell out with your father, he told me some very nasty stories about the way you behaved at home. But you'd better not try anything in this school, young lady. I shall be keeping a very close eye on you from now on. Sit down and keep quiet. And that is the end of chapter 13. I guess we'll have to wait till the next chapter to see how the new comes out.